right, happy Monday to you. It's October 5th. I'm meteorologist Brian McClure. I'll get right to it and tell you that we were talking about two tropical lows or waves before going into the weekend. One was Gamma, and then we said, hey, the next tropical wave is going to probably develop sometime by Monday. Sure enough, it started developing yesterday, and it's organized into a tropical storm today, and that is Delta. So when you look at the two features, you can see right over here is what's left of Gamma, and it is weakening, by the way. Here's Delta back here, and it is strengthening, and it is going to be the one to watch over the course of the next, basically this entire week, okay, 4 or 5 days. Looks like it could make landfall later this week. Gamma's not that impressive for a number of reasons. When you look at the satellite picture today, you'll notice that there's still a very distinctive swirl. See, there it is with Gamma, but there's no moisture surrounding it anymore. This should not be a surprise to anybody that was watching me last week, and I said, hey, there's going to be strong upper level winds through here, and it's going to rip off all the moisture, which is why it was wet across the weekend over Florida, and all that mid and upper level moisture is going to be ripped off to the northeast. So yes, even though the surface low technically is down here, all the mid and upper level energy has been detached to the northeast, and the surface low is just kind of wobbling around down here and almost aimlessly. It doesn't really know where to go. There is technically a surface high pressure right up in here, and so that's going to exert somewhat of a northeasterly wind influence on it. So it's probably going to somewhat be biased and drifting southwestward. But again, it's so weak that it's just kind of sitting almost nearly stationary. Doesn't matter. There's not much rain around it. There's hardly any wind around it. So it's the type of feature that when you look at, looks, wow, there's a definite swirl, but it's actually not that impressive. And then down here on the very corner of your screen is where you've got the next feature, which is Delta. So let me take you to that one. Okay, here you can see Jamaica right in here, Cayman Islands right in here, and the western part of Cuba right over here. Okay, center circulation is right in here, and it's moving like this. Okay, it might move a little bit more like this for the next day or two, but I think even if it does come up in here, ultimately it's going to move like that in the long run. So yes, Cayman Islands need to watch this. Yes, the western side of Cuba needs to watch it. It's already passing Jamaica, so that's not a big deal there. All right, so there's the latest forecast track on, and I actually think this is a pretty good track. And of all the hurricanes and tropical storms over the years that I've tracked, this one, not to sound cocky, but it's probably the easiest one. Everything's just kind of falling into place to make this a somewhat straightforward forecast. Again, could it go a little bit farther one way or another, like maybe a little bit farther north in the short term and then a little bit farther south in the long run? I could also see it coming out a little bit farther west here. I could see it maybe tucking in a little bit closer east here. Yeah, I mean, and that's why we always have a forecast error cone. But in terms of straightforwardness, it doesn't get much more straightforward than this. Here's what I mean by that. This is the spaghetti plot that essentially shows all of our reliable computer models put together. That looks like a lot of consensus, right? Okay, if you take the consensus on those, here's what it shows. Whew, that's a tight agreement. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes a little bit closer to Cancun over here, and then maybe does some curlicues and comes farther out west here, and then does more like that. I wouldn't be surprised one bit. And it will make some weird moves like that, but in general, it's a straightforward forecast. Now, and I'm going to show you why. However, before I get to that, I want to show you something that's kind of interesting and showing up right now, and that is sea surface temperature and potential heat. All right, as meteorologists, we don't just look at sea surface temperatures. We look at the depth of the warm water and therefore how much available energy there could be. Currently, where Delta is and where Gamma was, these are really, really warm waters to deep depth, so they have the potential to really intensify quickly, and they have a potential to really feed on a lot of warm water. Up in this area of the north central Gulf, There really isn't a lot of that, partially because of the cold fronts that have been already coming down early season, and partially because of earlier hurricanes and tropical storms that were already in that area. So what I think will happen likely is that you will see Delta peak in intensity here over the next 3 days, right in this area where the waters are warmest. And then when it goes to make its northerly turn, it likely will not get any stronger and probably will even start to weaken as it approaches the coastline for a couple of reasons. There's wind shear, but there's also cooler water. Now that doesn't mean that this area cannot support a hurricane. It can. I looked at the water temperatures. This is today's plot, actually. Actually, it was this weekend's plot. But it's not that old. The point is, it's pretty up to date. And what I want you to notice is right about in here, that demarcation right there between the really warm water and the slightly cooler water. That's about your 80-degree temperature line. So anything in here, it can support a hurricane or tropical storm, but it's not going to support what I would call like a major Cat 5 intensifying up to the coast. No, the opposite. Even if it becomes a Cat 4 or 5 in here, it would weaken as it goes into this area. And vice versa. The water is very, very warm down here, which is normal. This is where the water typically is warmest. And that's why we always say in October, we worry about the Western Caribbean and the Southern Gulf because something could definitely intensify rapidly down there. My point to all this, though, is if you've been watching me over the past month and a half, 2 months, this is not a surprise to me. I said the pattern going into October worried me a little bit because we were going to get early season cold fronts, which excites everybody and yay, cooler air. But it can also be a negative because then it tends to really ramp up or can ramp up tropical activity late in the season due to lower pressures, cold front steering currents, all kinds of things, okay? This does not look like a Michael situation. Remember Hurricane Michael a couple of years ago where it developed down here and then it went due north and as a strong Cat 4, borderline Cat 5, right? It's not really like that because the water temperatures are cooler and there's some wind shear in its headwinds, but I do think it will be like Michael in the short term. What I mean by that is down here in this area, I do think it will intensify, and actually I wouldn't be surprised if it intensifies really rapidly in the next 24 to 72 hours, so basically a day to 2 days, and then you see it kind of level off, and if anything kind of maybe stair step down a little bit, because everything's playing in its favor in the short term. So, I mean, I know that when you look at these forecast maps, let me go back to the original on that, National Hurricane Center has a good methodology of tending to kind of stair step up and stair step down. So they tend to, some people say, be conservative in some cases. I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't be surprised if it's much stronger than forecast right in here and then weaker than forecast in here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it ramp all the way up to like a 3 real fast and then maybe come down to a 2 and maybe if we're lucky, maybe even down to a 1 before making landfall. Because of everything that I've been talking about. What's steering it right now is a strong subtropical high, what we call the Bermuda high. This is not a surprise. It's right in here. This is about where it lives during the hurricane season. It fluctuates east or west, south or north a little bit, but that's where it is. And so everything's going to want to go around the periphery of that, okay, around the western side. And sure enough, when you look at where the center is right now on Delta, it's right down in here. And so it's going to be moving like this for the next few days. Let's go forward in time and give you a good idea of what this high pressure does. Well, it doesn't move away from Florida. If anything, it actually moves more over Florida. See, right in here? Okay, so I've had a few people ask me, but is it coming towards Florida? I really don't see any scenario where that happens. Now, I guess I shouldn't say all of Florida. There could be a scenario where maybe it comes towards the western panhandle. But even that is kind of iffy at this time because of how strong this high pressure is. Okay, let's go deeper in the week. This is Wednesday now. See what I mean by that high pressure? It's kind of nudged itself, if anything, pretty far to the west. So it would be really hard for this storm to come like this. Instead, if anything, that's why I said I wouldn't be surprised if it actually goes farther west and touches Mexico on its glancing past like Cancun. Then if we go into Thursday, you'll notice that that high pressure starts to weaken a bit and back off. You can see it kind of backing off down into this area. So if it's going to make a turn, that's going to be the time frame. It's like Thursday, Friday time frame. It's going to start to make a turn either like that or like that and go northward. Remember, storms always want to go towards lower pressure, and they always want to go poleward if possible. In other words, northward in our atmosphere or in our hemisphere. Now, the small little monkey wrench in the short term, and I have had a lot of people ask me this, well, can it be possible that it goes a little bit farther to the west because of some interaction with gamma? Well, a lot of times I blow off silliness from social media and this and that, but in this particular case, yeah, it actually could interact with gamma a little bit. That's not silly. Sometimes you've heard me talk about the Fujiwara effect, where two storms will kind of try to rotate around each other. I don't know if that's really going to happen in this case. I don't think so, because gamma is weakening rapidly. Again, it's just kind of a blob, a little circulation. It's not that big a deal. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think the more dominant feature, which is going to be delta, already is going to come up like this. And think of it, instead of like a Pac-Man gobbling up, think of it more like it just absorbs moisture of whatever's left over gamma. That's what I think is going to happen. So this is a moisture map. What I want you to focus on is gamma sitting nearly stationary, maybe if anything drifting into Mexico, and delta moving towards it rapidly. See, here comes delta, right? And then where did gamma go? Well, it looks like it just kind of poof, because what ultimately I think ends up happening is what little is left of gamma just kind of drifts down like this, and then the little bit of moisture just kind of gets absorbed right up into delta as it passes by. And delta is just going to be like, see ya, I'm passing on by. Now, every now and then, though, what you'll see happen is, because gamma was in this area, and that's where lower pressures are, again, you've got a big high pressure over here pushing against a storm like this, and because there's lower pressures over here left over from gamma, you might get a scenario where it does nudge a little bit farther to the west because of that in that, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday time frame. No matter what, though, in the long run, it's eventually going to pull away from that lower pressure because two reasons. Number one, the upper level winds are going to be going like this, okay? And number two, like I always said, these storms want to go poleward. Okay, so that's ultimately why the forecast track has it headed towards Louisiana, and I think that is a very good forecast track. The timing on this is probably Friday time period. Both the Euro and the GFS, although the Euro has not had a good summer, I'll be honest with you. I have told you that numerous times. I've liked the model over the years, but it hasn't had a good summer, so I've leaned heavily on the GFS, so is the National Hurricane Center, and I think it's had a better handle on this. However, the Euro is starting to come around on this storm. It seems to be handling it okay. For example, let me go to this graphic. This is a wind swath graphic, so if you track the wind swath, meaning the strongest of winds with delta, you can kind of see the general path is right about in there, right? Okay. Well, let's go over to the Euro on the exact same thing, and you can see it's not much different. I would say the only difference is the Euro basically says it misses Mexico barely and then goes further west and then makes its turn. The other thing I want you to notice is, look at how you can tell. It's almost like, hey, the winds appear to be weakening and backing off right in here. You notice that? Okay, I think the Euro has a good idea and a good handle on what's happening up there, which I'm going to tell you here in just a bit. If I go back to the GFS, it's close and similar. The only difference is it says it starts to make a little bit closer nudge towards Mexico and then a quicker turn to the north. I don't think any of that really matters, because this isn't going over here towards Texas and it's not over here towards Florida. I think what matters is the exact location in Louisiana or maybe Mississippi. I think that's the bigger question mark. We're pretty confident on that. The GFS also doesn't back off as quickly on the winds. It does back off quick once it gets to land, but it doesn't back off as quickly like once it gets into that cool water. So I'm kind of wondering right now if the GFS is onto something, and maybe it's saying, hey, I'm moving at a fast enough forward speed that even though I'm going through the cooler water up here, I still make landfall as maybe a strong hurricane. That's possible. Okay, so those are little things that we're going to be watching. What I want to show you, and why I also expect some weakening. I kept teasing towards this, like, hey, there's another reason. This is a wind shear graphic chart. Okay, so this would be Friday morning, and where you see this color right in here, this is strong wind shear. So the winds would be coming like this, okay, and like that. And they would be really strong through this area. So assuming that we're right and the center comes right up through here and then it's headed like that towards Louisiana, there's going to be some really strong winds pushing against this storm in the upper levels like that. Okay, and because of that, that will start to cause weakening. It might be at the last minute, so it might not be enough to weaken it down from a Cat 2 or a 3 or something like that, but I do think it'll be enough to start weakening it, at the very least, kind of put a cap on what it can do as it comes closer to the coast. Hence why I said it's not like a Michael scenario where there's nothing in front of it but warm water and no wind shear, and it's just going to barrel right towards the coast unaffected. No, there's going to be some things that affect this down the road. So that's a good sign. If you come to the short term, let me show you where it is right now. Okay, this is your center right down in here. There is no wind shear anywhere near it. The closest wind shear is over here, 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 and back here. In other words, it's going to be in a perfect environment, right, tucked in there for the next 3 days. See my point why I keep saying I think it will actually strengthen pretty easily. And then if you go forward in time, you can kind of get the idea of, okay, yeah, there does appear to be some wind shear right in here. You see it right there? Okay, so it's hard to tell when it will start affecting this western side. And again, it's going to be a little different because if Euro is right and it comes farther this way, it's going to be a lot more affected. And that's probably why it's showing more weakening going towards the coast. If GFS is right and it stays more like out in here, it might not be affected until it gets up in this area. Hence why the GFS is probably hinting right now that it's stronger as it heads towards the coast. So you can see, as usual in tropical forecasting, there are going to be little things that we have to deal with. But in terms of confidence, this is probably the most confidence we've had all season long. Seriously, we have a lot of confidence in this forecast. I'm trying to look back through if there's anything else I wanted to show you. So when you look again at this forecast track, yeah, I think that's probably spot on right there. I think you've got a hurricane rapidly intensifying, and then you're going to see somewhere out here in the Gulf a northerly turn like this. It could come farther west. I don't think it will matter towards Texas, even if it does, because I think no matter what, it's going to make that north-northeasterly turn. It could come closer east. I don't think it'll matter for Florida too much. Maybe the western panhandle of Florida, but as of right now, again, everything's kind of hinting at Louisiana right there at that coast. So that's what we have for today. Again, it's definitely looking better. At the satellite view, yesterday, I wasn't really seeing a whole lot on the northern side. Yesterday, what was happening was there was a lot of dry air in this area, and so you really had like this out here in the middle of nowhere circulation, and then all the clouds and moisture on the south side. Well, now today, that's not the case. Today, it's actually wrapped up on itself. There it is right there, and this moisture is wrapped all the way around the center. Well, that's a sign right there that it is strengthening. There's no wind shear on it, and all this is warm water in front of it. So there you go. That's why I think it will be strengthening pretty quickly here over the next couple of days. So that's the latest there on Delta. Obviously, I'll be posting more stuff here over the next couple of days as we get new data in. Have a fantastic Monday.